April 12th. It seemed like any other school day at Little Explorers Preschool in Phoenix, Arizona. 20 bright-eyed kids, ready for a field trip to the Desert Botanical Garden. But this trip never made it back. What started that morning ended with a frantic phone call, a missing class, and a search that would grip the nation. Elena Ramirez, a young, dedicated teacher, had planned the day for weeks. She poured her heart into those kids. Everyone said she was a natural. The Desert Botanical Garden was supposed to be a fun, educational adventure. Behind the wheel was Sofia Vargas, a familiar face to everyone at Little Explorers. She'd driven that route for years, always with a smile and a wave. The kids loved her. The parents trusted her. Sofia was part of the family. The heartbreaking part? These children, barely old enough to tie their own shoes, were taught about stranger danger every single day. Don't talk to strangers, the posters in their classrooms screamed. Never go anywhere with someone you don't know. A cruel twist, considering what was about to happen. As that yellow bus pulled away from the curb that morning, leaving behind the familiar streets of Phoenix, nobody suspected it was the last time those children would be seen. Nobody knew that trip would become a nightmare etched in Arizona's history. The yellow school bus, Little Explorers Preschool emblazoned on its side, rumbled onto the highway. The air conditioning strained against the rising desert heat. Inside, 20 small voices, barely audible above the engine's hum, sang a medley of nursery rhymes. The wheels on the bus, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, songs of innocence, echoing in a space soon to be filled with silence. Elena Ramirez, seated in the front passenger seat, glanced at her phone. No signal. She tried again. Still nothing. A knot formed in her stomach. They were further out than she'd realized. This wasn't the route she'd expected. The Desert Botanical Garden was a Phoenix staple, an easy 20-minute drive. But Sofia, the driver, had insisted on taking a shortcut, a way, she claimed, to avoid the city traffic and give the kids a smoother ride. Elena, trusting Sofia's experience, had reluctantly agreed. Looking back, that decision seems small, insignificant, a minor adjustment to a routine journey. But it was the first domino to fall in a chain of events that would shatter so many lives. The landscape began to change. The familiar city sprawl gave way to the stark beauty of the Arizona desert. Saguaros stood like silent sentinels against the clear blue sky. Red rock formations rose in the distance. It was beautiful, yes, but also isolating. A place where help felt very, very far away. Elena, her unease growing, turned to Sofia. "Are you sure this is the right way, Sofia? I don't recognize any of this." Sofia, her eyes fixed on the road, chuckled softly.
Relax, Elena.
"I know this road like the back of my hand. It's a little longer, maybe, but we'll be there in no time. And the kids are enjoying the scenery, right?" Sofia's words were meant to be comforting, but they did little to ease Elena's anxiety. The road grew narrower, the pavement cracked and uneven. The occasional passing car kicked up clouds of dust that momentarily obscured the bus. The children, oblivious to the rising tension in the front of the bus, continued their sing-along. Their voices, innocent and carefree, filled the air. Old MacDonald had a farm. Row, row, row your boat. Simple songs about a world of safety and predictability. A world that, for them, was about to disappear. As the bus continued its journey deeper into the desert, the cell service remained elusive. Elena tried to push her worries aside, to focus on the excitement of the children. But a nagging feeling persisted, a sense that something wasn't right. A feeling that this road trip, this shortcut, was leading them somewhere they shouldn't be. The sun beat down on the bus, turning it into a metal oven. The air conditioning struggled to keep pace. The children began to fidget, their energy slowly waning. Even their singing became less enthusiastic. Elena, despite her growing apprehension, tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. She led the children in a game of I Spy, pointing out the different plants and animals they saw along the way. I spy with my little eye something green, she said, forcing a smile. But even as she played the game, her mind raced. Where were they? Why hadn't they reached the botanical garden yet? And why, despite Sophia's reassurances, did this road feel so wrong? The bus continued its relentless journey. The landscape stretched on, mile after mile, a seemingly endless expanse of sand, rock, and sky. The children, their voices now silent, drifted off to sleep. Only Elena remained awake, her eyes scanning the horizon, her heart filled with a growing sense of dread. She didn't know it then, but she was driving straight into a trap. The relentless sun continued its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air inside the bus was thick with the stale scent of sunscreen and the quiet breathing of sleeping children. The monotonous hum of the engine had lulled them into a false sense of security, a fragile bubble of peace amidst the harsh desert landscape. Suddenly, the bus lurched, brakes screeching against the asphalt. The abrupt stop jolted Elena awake. The children stirred, groggy and disoriented. Elena looked at Sophia, her brow furrowed. "What's wrong, Sophia? Why did you stop?" Sophia, her face flushed, turned to Elena. I need to stop. I really need to use the restroom." Elena glanced out the window. Nothing. Just endless stretches of sand and scrub brush. "Sophia, there's nothing out here. Can't you wait? We're almost there, right?" The question hung in the air, laced with a subtle accusation. Sophia's voice took on an edge of desperation. "I really can't, Elena. I've been holding it for hours. It'll just be a minute. I promise." She emphasized the "I promise" with a sincerity that, in retrospect, felt chillingly rehearsed.
Elena hesitated.
Leaving the children unattended, even for a moment, felt wrong. Against every instinct she possessed as a teacher, she felt trapped. Sophia's urgency seemed genuine, and the thought of the driver suffering in silence was unsettling. "But Sophia," Elena began, "we can't just leave the kids alone. What if something happens?" Sophia's eyes flickered to the rearview mirror, then back to Elena. "They're sleeping, Elena. They won't even know we're gone. And it's broad daylight. What could possibly happen? Besides," she added with a disarming smile, "I need you to come with me." "Come with you? Why?" Elena asked, her suspicion growing. The pieces weren't fitting. Something was off. Terribly off. Sophia's explanation was quick, almost too quick. "I don't want to go out there alone, Elena. It's a little creepy out here. And besides, I need you to watch my back. Just in case." Elena, despite her reservations, felt a pang of sympathy for Sophia. The desert could be intimidating, especially for someone alone. And Sophia's request, however unusual, seemed reasonable enough in the moment. That was her mistake. That moment of empathy, that willingness to trust, would haunt her for the rest of her life. With a sigh of resignation, Elena agreed. "Okay, Sophia, but we'll be quick. And I'm staying right by your side." Sophia's relief was palpable. She practically jumped out of the driver's seat, her movements almost frantic. "Great. Thanks, Elena. You're a lifesaver." As they stepped off the bus, the heat hit them like a wall. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant chirping of crickets. Elena scanned the horizon, her unease intensifying. There was nothing but emptiness in every direction. Sophia led the way, walking quickly towards a cluster of scrub brush a short distance from the road. Elena followed close behind, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. And then, the moment that would forever be etched in Elena's memory. As they reached the scrub brush, Sophia stopped abruptly and turned to Elena. "Wait here," she said, her voice strangely flat. Elena, confused, hesitated. What? Why? Sophia didn't answer. She simply turned and walked towards the scrub brush, disappearing from view. Elena stood there, alone in the desert, the weight of her responsibility crashing down on her. She should have known. She should have seen it coming. And then a close-up on the rearview mirror of the bus. The sleeping children reflected in its surface. Unprotected, unaware, waiting for a teacher who would never return in time. The empty road stretching out behind them, a silent promise of what was to come. 14 weeks, 98 days, an eternity in the lives of those families left behind. The news cycle had moved on as it always does. The missing Little Explorers preschool class became a cold case, a fading headline. Hope dwindled with each passing day. The desert, however, remembers everything. It holds its secrets close, buried beneath the shifting sands. Rick and Sarah Johnson were not looking for secrets. They were just trying to find their way back. Experienced hikers, they'd ventured off the marked trails, seeking a solitude that only the Arizona desert can offer. They found something else entirely. They'd started their hike early that morning, confident in their navigational skills. But the desert plays tricks on the eyes. The endless expanse of sand and rock can disorient even the most seasoned travelers. They'd lost their way hours ago, their water supply dwindling, the sun beating down with merciless intensity. As the day wore on, their hope began to fade. They argued, their voices raw with exhaustion and fear. The once scenic landscape now seemed menacing, a vast and unforgiving prison. Just when they were about to give up, to succumb to the heat and despair, Sarah spotted something. A slight disturbance in the earth, a subtle irregularity in the otherwise uniform landscape. Rick, skeptical and exhausted, initially dismissed it. It's probably just a gopher mound, Sarah. Let's just keep moving. But Sarah, driven by a desperate instinct, refused to be deterred.
No, Rick.
There's something different about it. Something wrong. As they got closer, the subtle differences became more apparent. The earth was looser, darker than the surrounding soil. There were small, scattered stones that seemed to have been recently disturbed. A sense of unease washed over Rick. He knew deep down that Sarah was right. This wasn't a natural formation. This was something else. Something sinister. Hesitantly, Rick knelt down and began to brush away the loose earth. Sarah watched, her breath held captive in her chest. The silence was broken only by the rustling of the wind and the frantic beating of their hearts. As he cleared away more and more of the soil, colors began to emerge. Bright, vibrant colors that seemed jarringly out of place in the muted tones of the desert. Red, blue, yellow, green, the colors of childhood. Rick stopped, his hand frozen in midair. He knew what he was looking at. He didn't want to believe it, but he knew. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears welled up in her eyes. She recognized the colors, the patterns. She'd seen them on the news, on the missing posters. They belonged to the Little Explorers preschool class. With trembling hands, Rick resumed digging. He unearthed one backpack, then another and another. Small, brightly colored backpacks, each bearing the name of a missing child. Lily, Ethan, Sophia, Mateo, names that had become synonymous with tragedy. Sarah collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The reality of what they had found washed over her, a wave of grief and horror that threatened to overwhelm her. 20 innocent children, buried in a shallow grave in the middle of nowhere. Their dreams, their futures, extinguished. Rick, his own emotions threatening to consume him, forced himself to remain calm. He knew what he had to do. He had to call for help. He had to tell the world what they had found. He fumbled with the phone, his fingers clumsy and unresponsive. Finally, he managed to dial 911. The phone rang, each ring echoing in the vast silence of the desert. It felt like an eternity before someone answered. When the dispatcher finally answered, Rick's voice was barely a whisper. I think we found them, he stammered, his voice shaking with emotion. The missing children. We found them. The desert night descended quickly, shrouding the scene in darkness. Floodlights illuminated the shallow grave, transforming the desolate landscape into a macabre stage. The silence was shattered by the arrival of law enforcement, their sirens echoing across the vast expanse. The investigation had begun. Leading the charge was Detective Isabella "Izzy" Flores. A veteran of the Phoenix Police Department, Izzy had seen her share of darkness. But nothing could have prepared her for this. The weight of 20 missing children, now presumed dead, settled heavily on her shoulders. Izzy approached the grave, her eyes scanning the scene. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. The sight of the small, brightly colored backpacks, scattered across the ground, was a punch to the gut. These weren't just objects. They were fragments of lives, reminders of innocence lost. The forensic team meticulously documented the scene, photographing and cataloging every piece of evidence. Izzy watched, her mind already piecing together the puzzle. Who would do this? And why? Izzy knelt down and picked up one of the backpacks. It was a bright pink backpack with a picture of a unicorn on the front. The name Lily was scrawled across the tag in childish handwriting. Izzy unzipped the backpack and peered inside. Inside, she found a collection of small personal items. A half-eaten bag of goldfish crackers, a crayon drawing of a smiling sun, a small, well-worn copy of Goodnight Moon. These were the treasures of a 4-year-old girl, now tragically lost. Izzy carefully placed the backpack back on the ground and picked up another one. This one was blue with a picture of a race car. The name Ethan was written on the tag. Inside, she found a collection of toy cars, a dinosaur figurine, and a small, crumpled note from his mother. The note read, "Ethan, have a wonderful day at the Botanical Garden. Mommy loves you very much. Be good for Ms. Ramirez." The simple words were a dagger to Izzy's heart. A mother's love, forever frozen in time. As Izzy examined the backpacks, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. She learned about the missing preschool class, the road trip to the desert botanical garden, and the frantic 911 call that had launched the search. The next step was to learn more about the people involved. Elena Ramirez, the young, dedicated teacher, and Sofia Vargas, the seemingly cheerful bus driver. Izzy started with Elena. She interviewed her colleagues at Little Explorers Preschool, her family, her friends. Everyone described her the same way. Loving, responsible, dedicated. She was a natural with children, a teacher who went above and beyond for her students. Elena was the best teacher I've ever known. She loved those kids like they were her own. She always wanted to be a teacher. It was her calling. She would never do anything to hurt those children. Izzy learned that Elena had been excited about the field trip to the desert botanical garden. She had spent weeks planning activities and preparing the children for their adventure. But something didn't add up. Why had Elena agreed to take a shortcut on a remote, unfamiliar road? Why had she left the children unattended on the bus, even for a moment? Izzy knew that she needed to find Sofia Vargas. She was the key to unlocking this mystery. But Sofia was nowhere to be found. She had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and shattered lives. As Izzy stood there, in the middle of the desert, surrounded by the ghosts of 20 innocent children, she made a vow. She would find out what happened on that fateful day. She would bring justice to those who had been taken too soon. And she would never, ever forget the names of the Little Explorers preschool class. The initial wave of grief and shock began to recede, replaced by a gnawing need for answers. The public demanded them. The families of the missing children demanded them. And Detective Izzy Flores was determined to provide them, no matter where the truth led. Despite the overwhelming evidence pointing to Sofia Vargas's disappearance and potential involvement, A seed of doubt began to sprout in Izzy's mind. The inconsistencies in the timeline, the unexplained decisions made that day, all seemed to circle back to one person, Elena Ramirez. Izzy revisited the interviews with Elena's colleagues and family. They painted a picture of a dedicated, loving teacher, someone who would never intentionally harm a child. But could she have made a mistake? Could she have been negligent? The flashbacks revealed a woman who poured her heart and soul into her work. Her lesson plans were meticulously crafted. Her classroom was a haven of creativity and learning, and her interactions with the children were filled with genuine care and compassion. But even amidst the glowing testimonials and the heartwarming memories, Izzy couldn't shake the feeling that something was being left unsaid. There was a subtle hesitation in the voices of some of the interviewees, a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. The media, fueled by public outrage and a thirst for sensationalism, began to portray Elena in a less flattering light. She was no longer the angelic teacher, but a negligent caregiver, a woman who had failed to protect the children in her charge. The public, quick to judge and slow to forgive, latched onto this narrative. Social media exploded with accusations and condemnations. Elena's name was dragged through the mud, her reputation tarnished beyond repair. Then came the interview with Sofia Vargas. After weeks of searching, she had finally been located in a small town near the Mexican border. She was hesitant to talk, guarded and evasive, but Izzy, with her relentless questioning and her unwavering gaze, managed to break through her defenses. Sofia claimed that Elena was in charge that day, that she had made the decision to take the shortcut, and that she had insisted on stopping for a bathroom break. She portrayed herself as a mere driver, following the instructions of her superior. "I just did what I was told." Ms. Ramirez was the teacher, she was in charge. She said it was okay to take that road, she said it was okay to stop. I just followed her instructions. Izzy listened intently, her mind racing. Was Sofia telling the truth? Or was she trying to deflect blame, to protect herself from the consequences of her actions? The evidence was circumstantial, but it was enough to shift the focus of the investigation. Suspicion began to fall squarely on Elena Ramirez. The loving teacher was now a prime suspect in the disappearance and deaths of 20 innocent children. The weight of the world seemed to rest on Izzy's shoulders. She knew that the truth was out there, buried beneath layers of lies and deception. But finding it would require her to confront her own biases, to challenge her own assumptions, and to follow the evidence wherever it led, even if it meant implicating someone she had initially believed to be innocent. The relentless scrutiny of Elena Ramirez, while fueled by public outcry and circumstantial evidence, left Izzy with a persistent unease. Something felt forced, a narrative too easily constructed. The more she dug into Elena's life, the more convinced she became that the teacher was a victim, not a perpetrator. Izzy shifted her focus back to Sofia Vargas. The seemingly innocuous bus driver, who had conveniently vanished after the tragedy, was now the key to unlocking the truth. Izzy ordered a deep dive into Sofia's background, leaving no stone unturned. The initial findings were unremarkable. Sofia had a clean criminal record, a stable employment history, and a seemingly normal life. But as Izzy's team dug deeper, cracks began to appear in Sofia's carefully constructed facade. They discovered a history of financial problems. Sofia was deeply in debt, struggling to make ends meet. She had taken out multiple loans, maxed out her credit cards, and was facing foreclosure on her home. The financial pressure, combined with her sudden disappearance, raised a red flag. Izzy suspected that Sofia was desperate, and desperate people were capable of anything. The breakthrough came when one of Izzy's detectives uncovered a series of encrypted messages on Sofia's phone. The messages were difficult to decipher, but with the help of a forensic expert, they were able to unlock the code. The messages revealed a series of communications between Sofia and an unknown contact. The content was cryptic, but the references to money, transportation, and cargo were unmistakable. Further investigation revealed that the unknown contact was Marco the Coyote Rodriguez, a notorious human trafficker with a long history of smuggling people across the border. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Sofia wasn't just a bus driver. She was an accomplice in a heinous crime. She had been recruited by Marco Rodriguez to kidnap the children and smuggle them across the border. Sofia, desperate for money, had agreed to help Marco Rodriguez in exchange for a substantial sum. She had been instructed to take the shortcut, to stop at a predetermined location, and to create a distraction. I can get them there. I know that road like the back of my hand. But I need to know I'm going to get paid. Sofia said, "You'll get your money. Just do what you're told. And don't screw this up." The bathroom break was a carefully orchestrated setup. Sofia had signaled Marco's men, who were waiting nearby, hidden in the scrub brush. They had ambushed the bus, overpowered Elena, and taken the children. Elena, trusting and unsuspecting, had been betrayed by someone she thought was a friend. Her dedication to her students had been exploited. Her kindness turned into a weapon. The shallow grave was a temporary solution, a way to dispose of the evidence until the children could be transported across the border. But something had gone wrong. Perhaps the children had become too difficult to manage, or perhaps Marco Rodriguez had simply decided that they were no longer worth the risk. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow. The missing children had not simply wandered off or been victims of a random act of violence. They had been deliberately targeted, their lives stolen for profit. And the woman who was supposed to protect them had been the one to lead them to their doom. Armed with irrefutable evidence, Izzy prepared to confront Sofia Vargas. The carefully constructed web of lies was about to unravel, exposing the cold, calculated heart beneath. The interrogation room was sterile and unforgiving, a stark contrast to the sun-drenched desert where the tragedy had unfolded. Sofia, initially defiant and dismissive, shifted nervously as Izzy laid out the evidence. The encrypted messages, the financial records, the connection to Marco the Coyote Rodriguez. The color drained from her face, replaced by a sickly pallor. "We know about Marco Rodriguez, Sofia. We know about the money. We know about the plan. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending you had nothing to do with this." Sofia vehemently denied everything. She claimed that she had never met Marco Rodriguez, that the messages were fabricated, and that she had no idea what Izzy was talking about. Her voice was shrill and desperate, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "I swear, Detective, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never met this Marco Rodriguez. Those messages, they must be fake. Someone is trying to frame me." Izzy remained calm, her gaze unwavering. She had seen this act before. She knew how to break through the lies, to expose the truth that lay hidden beneath the surface. Izzy presented Sofia with a photograph of her meeting with Marco Rodriguez, taken by a surveillance camera weeks before the field trip. The photograph was undeniable proof of their connection, a nail in the coffin of Sofia's lies. The fight drained out of Sofia. She slumped in her chair, her shoulders slumping, her eyes filled with defeat. The game was over. Flashbacks revealed the chilling details of Sofia's betrayal. She had deliberately led Elena away from the bus, knowing that Marco's men were waiting nearby. She had created the opportunity for the kidnapping, sacrificing the lives of 20 innocent children for her own selfish gain. The bathroom break was a ruse, a carefully calculated maneuver designed to leave the children unprotected. Sofia had known exactly what she was doing, and she had done it without a moment's hesitation. Finally, the dam broke. Sofia confessed everything. She admitted that she was desperate for money, that she had agreed to help Marco Rodriguez in exchange for a large sum, and that she had known exactly what was going to happen to the children. "I needed the money, Detective. I was going to lose everything. He promised me so much. I didn't know what else to do." The confession was a chilling testament to the depths of human depravity. Sofia Vargas, a seemingly ordinary woman, had been willing to sacrifice the lives of 20 innocent children for her own personal gain. Her greed and desperation had led her down a path of unimaginable darkness. But there was a twist, a final, gut-wrenching revelation that would forever alter the course of the investigation. Sofia revealed that Marco Rodriguez had promised her even more money if she could ensure that one particular child was among those kidnapped. Lily, the little girl with the pink unicorn backpack. Sofia claimed that Marco had told her that Lily was the daughter of a wealthy businessman who had crossed him. Kidnapping her was a way to exact revenge, to send a message. The other children were simply collateral damage. The kidnapping of the Little Explorers preschool class was not just a random act of violence or a desperate attempt to make money. It was a calculated act of revenge, orchestrated by a ruthless criminal and carried out by a desperate woman. And the innocent children had been caught in the crossfire. With Sofia Vargas in custody and the horrifying truth revealed that the kidnapping was not merely about ransom, but a targeted act of revenge with the innocent children caught in the crossfire, the urgency to find the missing children reached a fever pitch. Time was no longer a luxury. It was a rapidly dwindling resource. Every tick of the clock was a potential death knell. Izzy, fueled by a potent cocktail of anger, grief, and unwavering determination, mobilized every available resource. Her team, a dedicated group of law enforcement professionals, worked around the clock, fueled by coffee and the grim reality of the situation. The Arizona desert, vast and unforgiving, became the epicenter of a desperate race against time. The initial focus was on tracking Marco the Coyote Rodriguez. He was the key, the puppet master pulling the strings. His movements, his contacts, his patterns, all became the subject of intense scrutiny. Cell phone records, GPS data, witness accounts, every piece of information was meticulously analyzed, piecing together a fragmented picture of his movements after the kidnapping. The trail led them deeper into the heart of the desert, a labyrinth of canyons, mesas, and desolate plains. The terrain was treacherous, the heat was oppressive, and the odds were stacked against them. But Izzy refused to yield. She knew that the lives of 20 innocent children hung in the balance. Adding a crucial element to the search were Rick and Sarah Johnson, the hikers who had discovered the shallow grave. Their intimate knowledge of the area, honed over years of exploring the desert wilderness, proved invaluable. They possessed an innate understanding of the landscape, a sixth sense for hidden trails and secluded hideaways. "This area here," Rick said, pointing to a remote canyon on the map. "It's known as Dead Man's Gulch. It's a tough climb, but it's secluded. A good place to hide if you know how to navigate it." Sarah, with her keen eye for detail, provided crucial insights into the subtle signs of human activity. She could distinguish between animal tracks and human footprints, identify disturbed vegetation, and spot discarded debris that might otherwise go unnoticed. "Look at these tracks," Sarah said, pointing to a set of faint footprints in the sand. "They're not animal tracks. They're too regular, too deliberate. And see how the sand is disturbed here? Someone was dragging something heavy." Working in tandem with the police, Rick and Sarah led search teams to remote areas that would have otherwise been overlooked. They shared their knowledge of water sources, potential campsites, and hidden caves, all valuable information in the desperate search for the missing children. The search was not without its challenges. False leads, dead ends, and the constant threat of the elements tested the resolve of even the most seasoned searchers. The emotional toll was immense, the weight of responsibility heavy on their shoulders. But amidst the despair, there were moments of hope. A discarded water bottle, a child's drawing, a piece of clothing. Each small discovery fueled the determination to keep searching, to keep pushing forward. The discovery of the drawing, so similar to the unicorn on Lily's backpack, sent a jolt of adrenaline through the search teams. It was a sign, a glimmer of hope that they were on the right track. The search intensified, the focus narrowing to the area surrounding Dead Man's Gulch. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. Ground teams meticulously combed the terrain, their eyes scanning every inch of the landscape. As dawn approached, casting a pale light across the desert, a breakthrough came. A search team, led by Rick and Sarah, discovered a hidden cave, concealed behind a thick curtain of brush. Inside the cave, they found signs of recent habitation: blankets, food wrappers, and children's toys. And then, they heard a sound, a faint whimper, a desperate cry for help. The discovery of the children huddled within the damp, chilling confines of the hidden cave was a bittersweet victory. Relief washed over Izzy and her team, a wave of gratitude that these innocents were, against all odds, still alive. But the bitter aftertaste of Marco's escape lingered, a poisonous reminder that the nightmare was far from over. He was a cornered animal, and cornered animals were the most dangerous. Seal the perimeter. Nobody in or out. I want every road, every trail, every possible escape route covered. He's not getting across that border, Izzy said. The children, though traumatized and weakened, offered invaluable clues. Through hesitant whispers and fragmented sentences, they painted a picture of their captivity, a terrifying ordeal orchestrated by Marco Rodriguez. They spoke of a ranch, a desolate outpost near the border, where they had been initially held. They described its layout, the armed guards, the oppressive atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. The ranch became the focal point of the investigation. It was Marco's stronghold, his sanctuary, the likely location of his final stand. Izzy knew that a swift and decisive strike was crucial. Hesitation could cost lives. The raid on the ranch was a meticulously planned operation, a symphony of coordinated movements and calculated risks. Armored vehicles rumbled across the desert landscape, helicopters circled overhead, and heavily armed officers advanced on the ranch from multiple directions. The element of surprise was paramount. The initial assault was met with fierce resistance. Armed guards, loyal to Marco and desperate to protect their illicit enterprise, opened fire, transforming the serene desert landscape into a chaotic battlefield. Gunfire echoed through the canyons, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder and the cries of the wounded. Despite the intense resistance, Izzy's team pressed forward, their training and determination overcoming the enemy's defenses. One by one, the guards were subdued, their weapons confiscated, their reign of terror brought to an end. But Marco was not among the captured. He had retreated into the main ranch house, taking several of the children with him as hostages. The situation had escalated from a raid to a tense standoff, a delicate dance between life and death.
Marco Rodriguez.
This is Detective Izzy Torres. You are surrounded. Release the children and surrender peacefully. This is your last chance. Marco's response was defiant, a chilling declaration of his intentions. He demanded safe passage to Mexico, threatening to harm the children if his demands were not met. He was a desperate man with nothing to lose. Izzy refused to negotiate. She knew that giving in to Marco's demands would only embolden him and endanger the lives of the children. She had to find a way to resolve the situation peacefully, but she was prepared to use force if necessary. Hours passed, the standoff stretching into the night. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anxiety. Izzy remained calm and focused, her mind racing, searching for a solution. Finally, an opportunity presented itself. A sudden thunderstorm erupted, unleashing a torrent of rain and wind that obscured visibility and created a diversion. Izzy saw her chance. Under the cover of the storm, Izzy and a small team of officers stealthily approached the ranch house. They breached the building through a back entrance, their movements silent and precise. Inside, they found Marco holding the children hostage in a fortified room. A tense confrontation ensued, a battle of wills between Izzy and Marco. Words were exchanged, threats were made, but neither side was willing to yield. The situation reached a breaking point. Marco, desperate and enraged, raised his weapon, preparing to fire. Izzy reacted instantly, firing her own weapon in self-defense. Marco Rodriguez fell to the ground, mortally wounded. The threat was neutralized. The children were safe. The aftermath was a whirlwind of activity. Paramedics tended to the wounded, officers secured the scene, and social workers comforted the traumatized children. The nightmare was finally over. Sofia Vargas was apprehended and charged with multiple counts of kidnapping and conspiracy. Her twisted plot had been foiled, her reign of terror brought to an end. Justice would be served. Elena, though cleared of any wrongdoing, was forever scarred by the events. The guilt of leaving the children unattended haunted her, a constant reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. In the days and weeks that followed, Elena dedicated her life to helping children, volunteering at a local hospital and advocating for stricter child safety laws. She found solace in service, a way to atone for her perceived failings. In the final scene, Elena visits the rescued children in the hospital, offering them words of encouragement and support. She vows to protect them and all children from harm. "You are safe now. You are loved. And I will always be here for you." The scars of the tragedy would remain, but the spirit of resilience would endure. The children would heal, Elena would find redemption, and the memory of the Little Explorers preschool class would serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and the enduring power of hope.